And we're live.
Super. Hey, everybody. How we doing here? Hopefully, you guys are all doing well. I'm doing well. It's Thursday once again. Thursday once again at 2 p.m. Eastern, which means it's time for another episode of the Cult of Copy Show. So if you're here with me live on Thursday at 2 p.m. Eastern, thank you for joining me. As I mentioned in the post, our director, Zane Miller, is going to be watching the comments both in the post in the Cult of Copy, where you can post your comments live. If you're watching via Google Plus or YouTube, you want to leave comments there. He's watching those too. If you have any questions about the content or anything at all for me, put them there. Zane will let us know when he has some questions, and we will interrupt the show to answer those. So who am I? I am the Reverend Dr. Sir Colin D. Terrio, Pontifex Maximus of the secretive organization of persuaders that now has, as of today, 7,000 members from around the world, over 90 different countries. Uh, That's just the way I like to describe it, really. We're just a bunch of marketing nerds that like to talk about copy and persuasion, and that's exactly what we are here today to talk about. Before I forget, if you want to join our discussion group, you can request to join at cultofcopy.com, which currently just redirects straight to the Facebook discussion group. Obviously, while I'm running the show, I'm not going to approve any new members, so you'll be in there for like next week if you want to jump in live. But I'll approve anyone who requests to join after the show, unless you look like a spammer or something. But I digress. Um, the show is basically just free content that I like to put out into the world, sort of introducing people to the idea of the kind of things that we talk about inside of the group. If you're interested in that kind of thing, you should click on the subscribe button via YouTube if you are watching this there. In the not so distant future, this will also be available as an audio podcast through iTunes, Android, and a couple of other places that I am looking at. If those have subscribe buttons of some kind and you like what we talk about, you should click it, because like I said, we record new episodes every week. Um, which brings me to this week's topic. Um, if you saw the post that led to this week's episode, what we're going to talk about are 4 questions that if you answer them in advance before the person you're trying to persuade even formulates them in their mind, it creates a very solid persuasive structure, more so than you would if you just tried to pitch them on what you wanted them to do without really having a structure behind it. Therefore, very, very simple questions. With the answers can get kind of complicated, but the questions are super easy, as you'll see when we get to them. The sort of underlying idea behind these questions and why they're so valuable is because they give you various facets of describing why it is that this person you're talking to should do what it is that you're telling them to do. Having a reason why is very, very powerful, and I don't see it. I know it's here in the office somewhere. It's on one of my shelves somewhere, but in the Robert Cialdini classic of persuasion called Influence, he talks about an experiment, and if I was a better show host, I would have like looked it up and got some details for you to describe it rather than anecdotally, but I know what book it's in if you want to read about it. Basically, the premise is they had a copying machine at a university, which I don't even know if they still do that kind of thing. I haven't been to college in a long time, but that should tell you how old the experiment is. Basically, a bunch of students waiting in line to pay for copies of library books, as is the case in most university libraries, at least when I was there. The experiment involved an experimenter asking if they could butt in line and seeing if different reasons they were given would make it more likely for someone to let you in line or not. And the one that I can't remember the details of the experiment. Basically, they established is that yes, having a reason for skipping line is beneficial, but the biggest boost came from having a reason versus having no reason, while what the specific reason was didn't really have a whole lot of effect on the overall experiment, meaning If you just said, hey, can I get in front of you because I have to make some copies, that was good enough for whoever was deciding whether to let you cut in front of them in this very long line for the copy machine or not. A lot of marketers have sort of taken that story and latched onto it and quote unquote reason why marketing is a thing. People talk about it. And that's about finding very, very good reasons why your customer should buy the product that you're putting in front of them. And we're going to talk about my 4 questions in that aspect, and we'll talk about this in a little more detail because they actually are part of my sales letter template that I used to use when I was a freelance writer. I used it to write sales letters, to disassemble sales messages, to critique for people that I was a consultant for. And I do offer that template for sale, but I digress. The point of it is the 4 questions are like a simplification that are only really part of what would be a proper sales pitch. But just those 4 questions are very powerful in everyday use if you're trying to get, something out of your spouse or your boss or your buddy that you work with or your buddy that you drink with or the bartender or the lady at the kiosk in the airport or someone selling you something. Tons of different things. Basically, anytime you need to ask someone to do something, and you would prefer that not only they do it, but they just do it because they kind of want to, because you've given them good reasons, this is a very powerful tool. But it's also very simple. The whole reason I put all of that in front of it basically is because when I tell you what the 4 questions are, you're going to be like, oh, well, that's super simple, and you might not realize how actually powerful and valuable this is. So suffice to say, any reason for someone doing something that you'll give will automatically give you a boost in conversion rate, meaning they'll do what you say or not. But when you use these 4 questions, it basically carves out a more realistic idea where the answers to each of these questions add on to each other and sort of give you a really solid 3-dimensional interrelated reason why to do any particular thing. Just takes a little bit of effort before you talk to the person to think up what your answers are going to be. So, all of that being said, let's dive into what these 4 questions are. What we'll do to discuss them is I'll just tell you what all 4 questions are, and then we'll go into each one in detail. So the 4 questions, super easy. You can write them down if you want. I have no trouble remembering them just by themselves. So they are, number 1, why me? Number 2, why you? Number 3, why this? And number 4, why now? These 4 questions, just 2 words apiece, but the word why gives you an automatic reason to answer with, well, because ... whatever your answer is. And the trick with the because is that it gives you that reason, right? So asking yourself these 4 questions before your prospect thinks to ask them to you, your mark, your persuasion target, whoever that might be, before those questions crop up in their mind, ask them to yourself and use them to construct your message. So essentially, you're going to be giving them answers to questions that their brain is going to want to ask, but before they can think to ask it. Which, by the way, anytime you can do that with someone, it has this bizarre psychological effect where if you eliminate someone's objections before their brain can actually formulate it, it just feels right to them, and they feel like it was their own idea, because basically the conclusions that their brain are coming to conform to reality, so pretty much they quit questioning it right away, and they're like, okay, well, everything's in order here. You only got to do that 2 or 3 times before their brain's just like, okay, well, I have no more objections. This must be great. I digress. That's just another additional trick that you can use with these. So to dive into each of the questions again, in brief, all 4. Why me? Why you? Why this? And why now? The first one is why me? And think of these questions as being the question that the person you're trying to persuade is asking. So they want to know, why me? Why are you talking to me? What is it about me that has anything to do with what we're talking about right now? When you're trying to get someone to understand why it is you're talking about them, these are the ones that typically work in like a marketing sort of context, but you can use them in a regular context too. So a problem, right? Your person you're talking to has some kind of problem. That's the reason you're talking to them. They have a problem, a specific problem. You're going to tell them about your solution later. But if that's the what you have for them is a solution to a problem, the whole reason you're talking to them is because they have a problem. If that's the case, if that's the reason you're talking to them, you can just ask, hey, do you have problem XYZ, or did you ever notice blah, blah, blah? If it's a casual conversation, you'll notice a lot of advertisements start that way. They put your focus immediately on identifying if you even have the problem. Do your legs twitch at night when you're trying to go to sleep? I don't know, maybe, I guess. You have restless leg syndrome, buy this medicine, or whatever the case is. But you'll notice lots and lots of advertisements start with qualifying you as a person who has a particular problem or not. The two facets of this, people can either be suffering from a problem currently, which if you sell things, that's your best customer because they're probably actively looking for a solution to a problem they have, which is why you want to rank in the search engines and buy paid advertising and all of that. So when someone actually says, hey, blah, 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 I have this particular problem, they'll find you because that's how you're qualifying them. But it doesn't have to be a current problem. It can be a possible potential future problem, in which case the question you're sort of asking is, are you worried about this happening? So we'll talk more about the proper way to match up a solution with that particular kind of problem a little later on. But suffice to say, one of the reasons you can get people to say, okay, well, I get why you're talking to me, is not only an actual problem, but a perceived potential problem that may come up in the future, something they're worried may happen. Another angle altogether that you can ask when you are trying to figure out why me and explain that to the person is because they have a particular interest. So just like I did at the beginning of the show, I explained what it is we're talking about, why we're here. If you're interested in the topic of persuasion, that's why you, right? That's why you're watching this. I set it up so that you knew that ahead of time, so there's a reason for you to keep listening. That's just a minor example of it, but interest is the point. Interest is a reason that you can give someone to say, why me? Why are you talking to me? We have a common interest, or I know you're interested in this, or are you interested in this? And when you ask them, you know ahead of time that the person you're asking actually is interested in whatever you're asking them about. That's a sneaky trick. Asking people questions that you already know their answer. By guiding them with their answers, you can lead them towards the decision you want to make. So if I know for a fact you already say have stinky feet as a problem, I might ask, hey, do your feet sweat a lot? Instead of saying, hey, you have stinky feet. I just sort of bury it a little more casually, but that is the way you would broach the conversation. Back to getting the answers out of people to guide them, the trick with that is if you get them to keep saying yes, eventually you get to the question that's like, hey, do you want to buy this right now? Usually if they've said 3 or 4 yeses leading up to that, they're in a more likely circumstance to say yes. But again, that's just for marketing. Another angle that you can use to explain to people why you are speaking to them, why me, is demographics. Basically, is what you're talking about pertinent only to one specific gender or to a specific age group, to a particular income level? You'll see this again in a lot of advertisements. Do you hate your job? Do you have a credit score at this number or below? Something like that. Demographic qualifiers are used especially to marketers' advantages in places like Facebook, where people give a lot of demographic information over freely, and then marketers get access to an ad-serving interface where they can select all of those different demographic factors. But you can literally use those to call people out, so they're like, oh yeah, that does apply to me, so it makes sense that you're talking to me. Location is another one. Location is technically a demographic factor, but I like location being a separate one because you can use it much more advantageously in the real world. If you have, I don't know the best way to describe it, location-based experiences in common. So like maybe you're from the same place, but that might not be necessarily likely. Maybe you've gone to vacation in the same place, somewhere very popular where lots of people go, like Disney World, or uh, any state someone's from that you may have been to, like a large city in that state. Usually people have been there. So when people say, oh, I live in California, I'm like, oh, like San Diego, Sacramento, north, south, kind of narrow it down. I've been to a few cities there, and they'll name like the biggest city that they're from, and maybe there'll be some common connection there. But what's sneaky about using location, the reason I bring that one up in the context of conversational persuasion, is again, it goes back to that thing where it doesn't matter what the reason why is, and it doesn't even have to necessarily be related. You can just use that to sort of put it in context that, like, hey, we've been to the same place, or we're from the same place, so that's why we're having a conversation. Oh, by the way, and then you can segue into the other thing you wanted to talk about. So it doesn't really have to be all four answers are tightly related. You're just looking for some kind of reason why you're talking to this person. The last factor I have under why me is association. In some cases, this would fall under demographics and stuff, but not always. But association would be things like a professional sort of avenue, like your career, or like a hobby you're associated with, or a fandom. If you follow a particular sport, if you follow a particular team of a particular sport, that's yet another avenue through which you can connect to someone. A very popular freelance marketer avenue with a lot of people that I interact with right now is selling t-shirts via Facebook ads, and the Facebook ads are targeted at these associations in most cases. Something you're a fan of like a particular dog breed or a particular kind of motorcycle or something like that, something that the person personally identifies with, and that's what you put out there as a reason why I'm talking to you. It's something that, it's not just an interest, it's something you actually participate in, whether it's a team that you follow or a series of books that you like to read, a TV show you're a fan of, things like that. All of those can be used. And again, in most marketing circumstances, it helps if it's tightly related to the answers to the other three questions, but it doesn't have to be in casual conversation. It can even be used as an introductory factor. So like if you're calling somebody because you want to get them to do something for you, you can come up with some reason why that has nothing to do with what it is you want them to do. Oh, I was just calling you. I saw this thing on TV. It was blah, blah, blah. It reminded me of you. Isn't that funny? While I have you on the phone, like I said, it's just a foot in the door. So hopefully you get what I mean there. And again, the order that you answer these four questions in is kind of important too, because people's favorite subject is themselves. Even if they're not egotistical, that's just the number one thing that'll grab their attention, is if something is relevant to them. So that's why we open with that. We're giving them a reason to say, hey, this is basically something identifiable about you that I recognize that I'm calling out, whether it's a problem or an interest you have, or you're from a certain place. Like if I see someone wearing like purple and gold with an LSU logo, I'll talk to them about Baton Rouge because I went to college there. I know the town. It's just a conversation starter, but that immediately makes people warm up to you when I say, oh, you're obviously an LSU fan. They're like, oh, yes, I'm covered in the school colors. How did you ever guess that secret thing about me? But it feels that way, even if they're broadcasting it. So that's why we start with that one. Next, we have why you, which is you, the person, the persuader. Why should they listen to you about whatever it is you're talking to them about? In most casual circumstances, if it's someone you already know, you don't really need a particular reason like why you. It's because we're friends and I'm asking you something, or we're married, or you're my boss, or you're this guy that I want to do something for me that I work with, or whatever the case is. Most casual interactions with someone who knows you, that's already sort of answered. And the embedded answer is because it's you and we have some kind of pre-existing relationship. In cases where you don't necessarily have a strong relationship or a lot of background in common with the person you're talking to, it's much more important to explain the reason why you are the person to talk to them about this. So in a marketing context, if you're talking about a problem that someone has that you have the solution to, the reason why they should listen to you is presumably because you're some kind of authority at whatever that problem is. You're an expert in it of some kind. Now that could be that you actually are an expert in that field, you work in that field, you get hired, you get paid to do what you do, or paid for the knowledge you have. For example, if you had a medical problem, you would want a doctor to give you advice on that problem, right? But depending on the problem, you don't necessarily have to be an expert. You can just be a person who has experience with both that problem and finding some sort of solution. The cases where this works very well are like if you are someone who has maybe tried a product to solve a problem and it worked for you, then you have personal experience with both the problem and the solution. That's the reason you're talking to them. So if you said, hey, do your feet stink and is it embarrassing to you? I know how you feel. That would be an example of why me? Well, you have this problem. Why you? Because I used to have it too, and I know what it's like. The other avenue you can use, and this works not necessarily in marketing, it works in marketing too, but you can use it conversationally, is some sort of accidental discovery, some kind of happenstance. So that example I gave of calling your friend and saying, oh, I came across this thing on TV or on the radio and it reminded me of you, or something like that, right? That would be an example of some accidental occurrence that is triggering, this is why I'm the person talking to you. Or a lot of the popular social shares with those Upworthy type headlines, first he did this, then you won't believe what happened next. That kind of thing plays off of curiosity. And that whole angle of sharing it that people do ties into that, like, oh, wow, this was unexpected. I found this and I just have to show it to you. That's like the embedded reason why someone would share that kind of thing with, their friends or their inbox, or print it out and fold it up and put it in people's mailbox. I don't know, that kind of thing. I actually remember when people used to do that, when they would have like photocopies of dirty joke illustrations and they would like photocopy it at work and take it around to show their friends. Like, now we have Facebook and we don't have to do that kind of thing. I just dated myself. That's how old I am. I remember people sharing dirty photocopy jokes. In addition to accidental discoveries like that, one other reason you can use, again, in selling circumstances or just regular persuasive circumstances would be concern. You're just concerned about them in some kind of way. You care. Like if you're reaching out to some family member or something that you haven't talked to in a while, just concerned, wanted to know how you're doing. Could be, again, based on like a problem. I've suffered the way you have, and I care about people who have this problem. Just concern, are you okay? I'm worried about you, that kind of thing. People are generally accepting of concern of others when it seems genuine. Sometimes it could backfire if it's the kind of person that's hostile and doesn't really want to be talked to in the first place. That one's not really going to work because they're like, I don't care. I don't care if you care about me. Get out of here. So that one only works in circumstances where if you say, well, I was just thinking about you. I'm concerned. They'll go like, oh, those are the circumstances where it'll work. In addition to concern, the last one I have note of here, and again, all of these ones that I'm saying are not all encompassing. These are just like the few examples that I thought I could talk about for about an hour to fill up a show. But there are many, many more. All of them are valid. These just are a few different topics that I came up with. But the last one under YU is a favor. Surprisingly, even strangers can ask other strangers for favors, and most of the time people will comply if it's something super easy to do and it might be seen as rude to refuse. So you could ask a total stranger, hey, can I borrow that pen that you have there? Most of the time, no one's going to be like, no. Like, sure, they'll let you borrow the pen. This is actually something called the Benjamin Franklin effect. And he noticed that if you have someone who kind of doesn't like you or is maybe lukewarm to you, if you ask them to do you these small favors that would be just totally rude and dickish to refuse, when they grant you these small favors, something happens in their brain where they're no longer able to think of you in a wholly negative way because they think, oh, well, I did that guy a favor. I must actually kind of like him at least a little bit. And he would use this in politics to make his opponents that didn't like him for various reasons, because he was just a smooth pimp with the ladies, or they didn't like how he was awesome at inventing things. Any variety of reasons you could hate Benjamin Franklin. That smug look on his face. But he would use this trick to like warm up to you. So like, for example, books were like a big deal back then, and like only rich dudes who cared about books had libraries. Most of the time, political dudes were smart dudes who would have had libraries at home because they were well off. So Franklin would be like, listen, man, I'm a kind of a book nerd. I heard you had a copy of this book. I would love to borrow it. Would that be cool with you? I promise to take it. I'm a publisher, dude. I'm not going to mess up your book. I love to think of Benjamin Franklin saying dude a lot. Anyway, you get the idea. He would ask them these favors. People would grant him these small favors, and then all of a sudden, they would warm up to him. They would like him. They would be more receptive to anything he was asking them. So that's a very powerful that you can use all the time, even with strangers, even in conversational avenues, not just business ones, as a reason for why you specifically are someone that they should be listening to. Because, hey, I need a favor. Can you help me out? Amazing the doors that will open with people. Now, the third question is, why this? Now, in a selling context, this would have to do with a product, right? Why this part of it is a product that you're trying to sell them, and you want to tell them why it's awesome. So now is a good time to take a commercial break, as we would usually do because we are right at the middle of the show. For anyone listening that is sort of lined up with what my content is and likes my show, and you would like to know about advertising in these spots, either on the video show or on the podcast, or both, let me know. That's something we're going to be doing very soon. But for right now, we're just sort of getting started. So they're all what we call house ads in the industry. So that said, like I said, these 4 questions that we're talking about today come from a small portion of a much larger sales letter template that I used to use to write sales letters when I was a professional copywriter. And then for a couple of years, I used it as the tool to reverse engineer existing sales copy for clients to find holes in it to make it better. It's a mind map format, which I love to use. That's what my show notes are in, or mind map format. And it comes with like, I think it's 2 hours worth of video training of me going through the mind map and explaining it. It's not for beginners, but if you are the kind of person that sells products and you are like an expert in your field and that's the place you're coming from to sell people things, it's great. It's a quick toolkit. Will it be as good as like hiring a 5-figure copywriter to do it for you? Probably not, but if you can write decent, you'll do a lot better than much cheaper copywriters most of the time. I hear nothing but good things about it. Anyways, it is for sale if you want to get it. Zane has the URL. I think he's going to pop it up on the screen. You should be able to see it there. I'm going to put it in the video description, so you can click it there. It's mynamecolinterrio.com/template. That goes straight to a PayPal link because counterintuitively I don't have a sales letter for the sales letter template, but that's because I only normally sell it to members of my Cult of Copy group. And they don't really need to be sold on it. So if you just want to grab it and the price seems cool to you, that's actually the Cult member only price. They get it for $50 less than the public price, which currently, and again, if you're watching this video like ages after I recorded it, the prices might be different. But right now, to the public, it's normally $250. To cult members, it's only $200. So right now, if you want, even if you're not a cult member, you can grab it at the cult member only price at that URL. Or if you want to read more about it, I don't have time to give you all the details on the show, but if you join the Cult of Copy at cultofcopy.com, which you can see beneath my name over here, if you join that group and I let you in after the show, there's a pinned post at the top of the page with a $50 bill as the image. That post contains links to all of my training courses. The sales letter template is one of them, and you can get it there, and there's a big giant description that explains everything you get and what it does, and even has some people who commented that used examples of work that they did using it. If you're into that kind of thing, check it out. It's one of my most popular products, really encapsulates what I do. So if you like the way I talk about things and think it could help you sell products and services to your customers, check it out. It's pretty good. If you are an advertiser and you would like to have me talk about your own product at these parts in the show where I do this kind of thing, get in touch. We'll be doing that in the near future. That concludes the bill paying section of today's show. But right back into where we were before. The third question is why this? And if you are selling something, the this part is going to be your product, right? So what is it? An item. It's just an item that you can get. A product is one option. But it doesn't have to be a product. Like, it could just be the purpose of the conversation. So if you're trying to persuade someone to just do something as opposed to buy something from you, you're making the case for that action, whatever it is that you want them to do. Whether it's, doing me a particular action, clicking a link, leaving a comment, going to the store for me, loaning me $1, whatever. Whatever the case is, this part that you're trying to answer, that's what we're talking about. We talked before about if you open the conversation with someone and said, why am I talking to you? It's because you have this particular problem. The reason for why this is because you have the solution to that problem, the answer to their prayers, the fulfillment of their dreams, whatever the case is. The variety of solutions available, though, are require different angles. So if you are promising someone a solution, a trick that I know is that you want to contextualize it, I guess temporally would be the right way to frame it. So like, is it an instant solution, as in if you get this from me or do what I tell you, whatever your problem is solved like that, just goes away immediately? Is it more of a long-term solution to where you get this from me and then keep getting it or keep doing it or whatever? It's like a lifestyle change, but it will solve your problem long-term. And then the third type of solution is a preventative. And if you remember before, I talked about you could have those, like you could frame it as a possible future problem that may occur that they might be afraid is going to happen. This is where your solution would tie in if it's a preventative. If you get this, you will never suffer from that other thing. If you take this vitamin, you will never get dementia. Or if you take this supplement, you will never get fat, or whatever the case is. I don't sell supplements. Please don't use claims like that in your ads. My understanding is they're bad news. I was using them satirically. But you get the idea. It's if you frame the reason for why this as a solution, it's definitely more powerful if you also frame that solution in time. How long does it take for that solution to come into effect? That makes a very powerful reason that people are willing to accept. Another reason why this is enjoyment. Almost everything that I do for free as part of that Cult of Copy group, like the show, for example, is for people's enjoyment. I mean, they might learn something and they might get something useful out of it, but really the main reason is I try to be funny, I try to teach interesting things, try to be helpful, but mostly I just want people to enjoy it. If you enjoy the topic, I hope you enjoy my delivery of it. But that's why this. The reason I want people to watch this show other than the ulterior motives of, making me famous and popular and helping me continue to make my living yammering on about this kind of thing. It's because I want you to enjoy it. I enjoy the topic. That's why I won't shut up about it. So that's just one example. Then you have to collect things. And if you can make a case for whatever it is that you want to do, if that you want the person you're persuading to do or buy or acquire, if you make it part of a collection, part of a set, meaning, well, it makes sense for you to do this because you've already done A and B, you may as well do C also. That's one way to drive people to action. Or if it's items, if it's a particular item, you could say, well, you already have this big toolkit full of solutions to do all these different issues. Here's another one. Just get this and add it in, and then you'll have a more complete set. You can do more things, or maybe even this item replaces other inferior items you have. That's one way to explain it, but the collection angle is very powerful with people because lots of people have that compulsion to where, like like Pokemon, they have to get them all, whatever it is. Like if you can convey to someone that they're leaving something out of something they're already partially committed to, that there's something missing that they need to get a hold of, that is a great, very powerful reason why they should do this thing or get this thing that you're telling them to do or get. Another reason for why this is what you can think of as advantage, which is to say, if you have this item or you do this thing, it's going to give you an advantage over your enemies or your adversaries or yourself currently, or whatever the case is, whatever your obstacle, your villain is, this is going to give you an advantage over them, right? So one easy advantage for anything that you might be trying to get someone to do or acquire is exclusivity, meaning not everyone's going to have this, so just having it is your advantage, right? It's sort of like an insider secret kind of thing. Again, you see this in many, many advertisements online. The one little trick to do blah, blah, blah. The one little secret that allowed him to make his muscles have muscles or have an 8-pack of abs in 7.5 minutes or whatever the case is. Obviously, I get shown a lot of trashy ads. I feel like every example I've come up with has been some terrible hype-filled social media advertisement. But who knows? Maybe it's just the garbage I read online and I'm getting retargeted for all of these terrible ads. But that's just one way to give an advantage. But I'm sure you can think of many to where basically I want you to do this thing because not only is it going to do what I want, but it's going to give you an advantage too. That's basically how peer pressure works, right? Like the reason that you should, smoke this doobie or whatever behind the schoolyard with your bad friends is because it's going to give you a social advantage. It's cool, man. Everybody's doing it, right? That's an advantage pitch. Why this? Because it gives you an advantage in some way. The final question is why now? And the same way that I said solutions feel like a more powerful reason when you tell them what time frame they could expect a result, really the whole argument for persuading someone is made more powerful when you give some sort of reason why they have to do it right now. Not like think about it, not waffle, not consider it, not shop around. Decide now whether it's yes or no, and if it's no, leave. It seems harsh, but really putting people in a position to make a decision, to commit to a decision, it's one of those things where it feels like you're putting them under pressure before they do it, but it's actually very relieving when they actually do it. So if you put someone under the screws a little bit to make a decision and you pressure them to say yes or no, whether they say yes or no feels like a relief. So you're actually giving them a good feeling if you think about it. But the why now is about taking that action, even if it is about an item versus actually doing something. You need to pressure them to do it now. You want them to do it now instead of later, Now is always better than later when it comes to taking an action. Here are a few ways. Again, these are from a different part of my sales letter template, but I teach these separately all the time. Lots of people talk about limitations on offers in the context of marketing, and a few words that they use interchangeably would be things like urgency or scarcity. The mistake people make is that those are actually two different things. They use them interchangeably, but they're not. I actually use three different limitations that are appropriate to use to give people an excuse to take action now, even if you're not selling them anything. But those three are scarcity, rarity, and urgency. Scarcity is about how hard something is to get. There aren't a lot of places to get it. They can only get it from you. Um, once once one or two places stop selling it, you can't get it anywhere else. Maybe it's the kind of thing that it'll run out somehow, and that's sort of in a gray area that kind of overlaps with rarity. But scarcity is about like how hard it is to get, how few places there are that you can actually get it. So an example might be something like my sales letter template, for example. There are tons and tons of places that you can get a sales letter template from somewhere, but you can only get mine from me. So if that perspective matters to you, that means mine is scarce. That's a way that you can use for people to take action now, is that, well, you can only get it from this one place and it may not be available forever. Then you have rarity. Rarity is about how few of that particular item exists. Can only the next 10 people get it? Is it something that's going to run out? Is it while supplies last? Um, you know, are there only going to be a certain number of tickets that you can win in the contest, so you have to call now? That would be another example. But anytime you can make it rare, that's a good reason. It's in whatever this is in season now, or the weather is not going to hold out. Anything like that where there's a limitation, a narrow window on the amount of whatever it is, or the ability to do whatever it is you're asking them to do. That's rarity. Then you have urgency. Urgency is when it's time sensitive, meaning like we have to go today. There's a countdown timer counting down. A limitation like while supplies last is also technically a limitation in time. It's just not a specific one, but it does put the same pressure on where there's some kind of deadline for whatever reason you can think of. You give people an urgency, they feel like they have to act right now, because if they delay or dawdle or hesitate, they may lose their opportunity altogether. Any reason you can think of to add that in will affect their decision and make them want to act now. And then the final one that we're going to talk about here under why now is, again, advantage. And the way you can use an advantage for getting something as a time-sensitive factor is, will getting it early give them some sort of early advantage over people? As in, if you get in on this first, you'll have a better result than people who get it later. That could be important. Accumulation is another one, meaning if you get a head start on this, you'll be farther ahead than other people. I've seen this actually used to sell people on like Bitcoin investing. If you get in now on Doge coins or whatever, you'll get them at a super cheap price, and the price is only going to go up, or whatever the case is. That accumulation of value is the key to act now, because the more you wait, the higher the price will go on things like that. That's just one example. And then depending, it might not be accumulation, it might not just be an early use advantage, but it could be like a head start, meaning the earlier you get this, the farther ahead you'll be from other people who fall behind. Whichever one seems appropriate, depending on the circumstance. Maybe multiple ones of those might be appropriate. But the trick is giving it an advantageous reason. This gives you an advantage that no one else has because you got it right now versus getting it later. anything you can think of that will fit that qualifier will work. That's it. Those are the 4 questions that if you give really good answers to those as part of your message to get someone to do what you want them to do, whether that's to just take an action, buy a thing, click a link, leave a comment, subscribe to your website, whatever the case is, any action you want someone to take, if you can give a good reason that's an answer to all 4 of those questions, it'll feel really solid and almost self-justifying. When someone reads it, it'll totally make sense to them if it's the right person, and they'll just go ahead and do it. You can almost think of it like I mentioned that it makes it like a 3-dimensional shape. I'm going to get real nerdy here for a second, but a tetrahedron is a 4-sided pyramid. It's the simplest Platonic shape, meaning it's the simplest 3D shape other than a sphere. So if you leave any one of those facets out, it's not a whole shape. It's missing a side, right? It's not solid. But if you have all 4 of those, it's very solid and 3-dimensional and pointy and real, right? It's got substance. So if you include answers to all 4 of those questions in whatever suggestion you're making to people, they are more likely to comply with it than not, just because you make a really great case. And it's super simple. Anyone can remember those 4 questions, which again are, why me? Why you? Why this? Why now? I think, do we have any questions as of yet, Zane? Questions, comments, anything like that?
You know what? I think everyone's just immersed with everything that you're saying. Because the only question that we did have was from Mike, and he said, "How do you get people to do what they want?" And I think he was just being facetious.
Oh, okay. Believe it or not, a lot of times it can be hard to get people to do what it is they say they want. That's actually, like, he may have meant it as a joke question, but I'm going to answer it seriously.
There you go.
A lot of times there are things that people want and they themselves can't provide adequate justification for them to do it, whether it could be something like quitting smoking. They know they have to, they know they want to, they're just not motivated to do it, right? Hitting them with persuasive messages like this repeatedly is the kind of thing that can help give them justifications. Keep stacking them up with different answers to all 4 questions until eventually the pile of justifications of reasons to do it far outweighs the reasons to keep doing this bad behavior that you don't want them to do. One thing that I don't even know if it still airs, but I used to watch this show, Intervention. That was like a wonderful glimpse into other people's terrible lives to make me feel better about mine, kind of like Hoarders. I love watching that. My house seems super clean after I watch Hoarders. But the idea with the show Intervention, it's funny because when you watch multiple episodes, you realize the setup is always the same. They have a script, and I had already developed these 4 questions, but basically the script comes from answers to these 4 questions. They're like, listen, you have a problem. Why you? No, why me? We're just all here because we care about you. Why you? We just want you to get into this program. It's going to help you. Why this? And if you don't go right now, we're kicking you out of the house. Why now? All 4 of them are covered in these interventions, and it's basically because you need someone to make a decision that sometimes they want to make, but they just won't make it. Health and fitness or buying insurance, anything preventative is the kind of thing where it's something someone knows they need to do, and they just won't do it. So hitting them repeatedly with messages that follow this structure will get them to actually do what it says they want to do, or else they'll amend what it is they say they want to do, because they'll come to terms with the fact that they just don't really actually want to do it, and they'll stop saying it. So there's a serious answer to what was probably just a joke question. With that, I will repeat the offer from earlier. If you are an advertiser interested in getting space on this show, this is where the second ad would be. So you get 2, one in the middle, one at the end. But again, all of the material we kind of talked about today comes from my sales letter template. So if you're not just a regular person that wants to be more persuasive in your day-to-day life, if you need to create messages in text or video form to convince people that you are an expert and they should buy whatever thing it is from you, product or service or otherwise. You want to tell an engaging story that makes them like you and trust you and gives them answers to all of these questions as well as a multitude of other reasons to buy your product today. You can get my sales letter template. It's a big giant mind map. It's easy to follow. It comes with 2 hours of video training. It's $200. The URL again, Zane has it up on the screen. colinterriot.com/template, COLINTHERIOT.com/template. That is the discount price normally available only to Cult of Copy members, but for the time being, it's available for $50 off to you guys also. If you do want to read more about that template, because I don't have the time to go into detail about it on the show, if you go to cultofcopy.com, you can join the group. I'll approve you after some period of time. There's a post pinned to the top of the page with a $50 bill because of the $50 discount that members get. You can read about the sales letter template there as well as any of the other trainings on like writing email sequences or webinar promos or all kinds of junk. If you like the way that I talk about persuasion and you would want to include that in your sales material, you should check it out. But if you want to get a shortcut to applying what we talked about today directly into sales messages, you can just go ahead and pick the template up now. And you don't even have to join the cult. You can just get it directly at the discounted price if you so desire. Last call for questions or comments or concerns or complaints, abuse, praise, whatever. Anything?
No, it's
I'm going to take a sip of my beverage if anybody wants to pop up.
All right. Yeah, I'm just going to go ahead and encourage you guys. I know Colin's been talking, pretty high-minded stuff, and you just want to, listen and internalize all the information. That's great. But now that it's over, this is a great time to start firing in some questions. Like I said, I'm checking out everything that's happening on YouTube Plus, as well as the Cult of Copy. So fire them in.
Super. Plus, if you're a member of the cult and you have questions that you want me to answer in future episodes, feel free to post about that too. If, because I know a lot of people are going to be watching the recording of this versus attending live. So if you have questions for the future, I don't mind revisiting a previous episode and a future episode to get those answered for you. But if we have none, we went a little over last week, so maybe we'll just do a little bit shorter this week, because I'm out of stuff to say, guys. I know, it's totally rare. It hardly ever happens. But to run through the whole spiel, this has been the Cult of Copy show, which we record live Thursdays at 2 p.m. Eastern here in my wonderful office in a 164-year-old Civil War-era farmhouse in the southeastern United States. The Cult of Copy is a discussion group for marketing and persuasion. We, as of today, have 7,000 members in 90 countries around the world and all 50 U.S. states and all of her territories, if you care about that kind of thing. If you go to cultofcopy.com, which you can see the URL under my name there, you can request to join. It's just a Facebook group currently. And I approve members several times a week, though I do check them out. So if you have a private profile or something, PM me so I won't just think you're a spammer. That being said, I am the leader of that group and the host of this show, Reverend Dr. Sir Colin D. Terrio. And that's it for this week. Tune in next time, and we'll have another interesting topic that I think you will enjoy. And if you show up live, you can interact with me and Zane here. If not, and you're listening to this on a recording of any of the possible avenues, YouTube, iTunes, Android, whatever, please click subscribe if you like it, because we will keep making more every Thursday, 2 p.m. Eastern. That's it. Adios. Have a good weekend.